Malaysian official says Islamophobia should be criminalized. Okay. Recently, a senior Malaysian official suggested criminalizing Islamophobia and demanded a quote-unquote firmer response from Muslim countries in response to the recent events in Sweden involving the burning of the Quran by a far-right activist, Rasmus Paludan. In an interview with the Turkish state-run news agency, Anadolu Agency, or AA for short, Abdul Razak Ahmad said, quote, anything that is Islamophobic can actually be considered as something that is criminal in nature. So much like anti-Semitism is a criminal offense in many other countries. He also stated that only a few Muslim countries, like Turkey and Saudi Arabia, had demonstrated leadership in combating Islamophobia. He stressed that other Muslim countries should be more responsive toward the problem. He pointed out that Western countries need to be, quote unquote, realistic by saying, quote, they can burn 1,000 or 1 million Qurans, but you can never eliminate the teaching of Islam from the hearts and minds of the Muslims. While countries While countries like Canada have taken steps to combat anti-Muslim bigotry amid attacks against Muslims, countries like Malaysia have long penalized speech and acts insulting Islam and even criminalized apostasy. So, okay, I need a second to go on a rant here. So, here's the deal. Last week, we talked about how Canada, as a country, has recently established a new, first ever special representative on combating Islamophobia. That is the official title of this representative. And we talked about how, while that woman who was given that position has her fair share of controversy herself, regardless, the purpose of that position is to advise the government on how to help prevent bigotry towards Muslims who have experienced deadly attacks in the Canadian nation. This is a goal, a vision, a value that we share because we are liberals and we fight for the protection of minorities. We fight for pluralism. But when we talked about that story, we talked about why it is honestly a bit devastating that the official title of this position contains the word Islamophobia in it. And this story with this Malaysian official is the exact reason why. Because this official is saying that, quote unquote, Islamophobia needs to be made illegal. And when he says that, because I can give you more statements for him so we all have the proper context, right? But I can tell you that his context is about insult criticism to Islam. Based on the parts of the interview that I saw translated, it does not talk about the safety of Muslims once. It is about the sanctity of Islam and protecting that. And so this is why using the word Islamophobia when we're talking about the real threat that some people face is such a giant disaster, especially coming from a Western liberal democracy like Canada, because it validates the same language that this freaking Malaysian official uses in a country where saying, I don't want to be a Muslim anymore is criminalized. And this is a little bit of a sidebar, but when he's like, these Western countries, they need to be realistic. They can never eliminate the teachings of the Quran from the minds of millions of Muslims. You can burn all the ones you want, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we all know that. You guys have Hafiz, like you memorize it. Then why are you acting so freaking insecure about the whole situation? Okay, I needed to get that out of my system. Armin, go ahead.
I mean, that is such a good point, Susie. I want people to completely understand what Susie is saying. Okay, So Canada taking action to fight against anti-Muslim discrimination, that's a good thing. We want to see that. Okay. I'm making that what Susie said, I'm trying to simplify it. That's good. Calling it Islamophobia, it's problematic. And you guys, so many people think that maybe we're being too picky. Who cares what they call it if they are fighting the right thing? We are acknowledging that anti-Muslim bigotry is the real thing and that it needs to be fought against. So if they're calling anti-Muslim bigotry Islamophobia, who cares? We all know that we need to be on the right side of standing against anti-Muslim bigotry. They're calling it Islamophobia. Get over it. But Susie is now showing you, using this news article to show you what the problem is. Because Islamophobia is a term that is meant for many people, for most Muslims, I would say, to be referring to fighting Islam, saying things against Islam. It's not about people. It's not about attacking Muslims. Okay, we want to protect Muslims. We don't want to protect Islam. And because that is the wide meaning of Islamophobia, the main meaning of Islamophobia is about people's positions against the religion, not about Muslims themselves. When you in Canada, one of the most advanced countries, one of the most liberal countries in the world, that is seen as a role model to free speech, secularism, liberalism, comes and says that we have now government officials that is meant to focus in fighting Islamophobia. Now you are normalizing the idea that this is now the global standard to be against Islamophobia. But what does Islamophobia mean in other places? It means this. And now Canada has led the way. This is why using the right words are so important. And I'm so glad that Susanna is like, because I wasn't gonna think it wouldn't have crossed my mind to connect these together and make that point. So well done, Susanna. Amazing.
Oh, I thank you. I mean, I think because when we talk about the problem we have with the Canadian situation, it can be, people can be like, we're trying to help people not get like assaulted for their for being beliefs or being a minority. Like, what's the problem with that? And in this news, in contrast, helps highlight why we have that contention. Because let's hear another quote from this politician just to make this even more clear about what this is really about. Quote, I think our concern about Islamophobia is really about the globalization of Islamophobia, how Islam has been misinterpreted, how Islam has been subject to hatred by people who have a minimum understanding of the religion. It's a very narrow understanding of the religion itself. So, and then he goes on to say, freedom of expression, freedom of thought, freedom of speech can never be at the expense of undermining other people's religion, undermining faith, or undermining coexistence. Notice how he said that Islam has been subject to hatred, not Muslims have been subject to hatred.
This is exactly why you get a bigger reaction from these people when the Quran is being burned than when Muslims are being attacked. Individual Muslims are even being killed, right? This is why you see on Atheist Republic, which is a channel that is against Islam and other religions, that our channel, okay, the amount of attention that we have brought to the discriminations against Muslims in China and in India is more than all the main English Islamic channels combined. So you could see more videos on Ali Dawah, Muhammad Hijab, all these other Smiles with Jannah, all these main English Islamic channels. You could see more videos about them talking about Quran burnings or people having positions against Islam than talking about the way Muslims are being treated in India and in China. Mostly in China, actually. Let's focus on that, right? Mm-hmm. But at Atheist Republic, we have, if you add all the times that these people have talked about Muslims in China, if all these channels combined together, it will be less than this atheist channel bringing attention to that. Because this channel apparently cares more about Muslims than those Islamic channels. because they care about protecting Islam, not protecting Muslims. So we have to show the difference here.
Yeah. I mean, I think they care about protecting Muslims, but just not as much as protecting Islam.
Not as much. Yeah, not as much. Yeah. Because it's more about, because protecting Muslims is the dunya. Protecting Islam is about the akhirat, right? So it's basically the competition of what matters in this life and what matters in the afterlife. So Muslims being attacked, hurt, it doesn't take away their afterlife. It takes away this life, and this life is not permanent. So even if you, I don't know, kill or abuse Muslims, all you have done is you have caused some misery for them in their temporary life. But taking away Islam, the Quran, the religion, someone's deen, someone's belief, that is more damaging because that will take away their eternal life. So that's why the priority is over the religion rather than the Muslims in this life. Yeah.
This guy also had some like very interesting comments, basically praising Turkey's soft power that I would want to get into, but it's getting a little bit like too detailed for probably most of our audience. But there was one more point I wanted to make because this is important. So this politician, the senior official, he talked about how, oh, well, there are places in the world where anti-Semitism is illegal, so therefore Islamophobia, quote unquote, should be illegal. And I looked this up, and based on my understanding, which basically, I mean, I can't look up every law in the world, right? But a little bit of research I did, when people say anti-Semitism is illegal, what my understanding is that it's anti-Semitism under the broader category of a hate crime. So an anti-Semitic hate crime is illegal, not necessarily because it's anti-Semitic, but because it's a hate crime. You know, the main problem is that in places like France, you have things like it is illegal to deny the big H. We don't say the word here, the really bad thing that happened to the Jewish people in World War II. It's illegal to promote denying that event, right? And this is one of the reasons why I say that I oppose that law in France. Not because I think that what it's trying to prevent is a good thing. I don't like people that deny that event happened. Let me be clear. But because that prohibition on a free expression is then used to validate their positions on unreasonably curtailing other people's free expression when it comes to Islamic criticism, essentially. They just point the finger and they go, well, they do it over there. Why can't we do it for this? Da, da, da. First of all, I think these are different comparisons. Like one is about a crime against humanity and then one is like a sacred religion, right? Those are already different. But one of them happened to a religious group of people, right? But either way, like neither of these restrictions should be in place. But because this one in France, for example, is already in place, they then go, oh, well, this is a good reason why we should have it over here. And we're going to use it to protect Islam, not actually Muslims. So. Yeah.
Anyways, we do need to move on. There's a whole bunch of comments. So we got a super chat by GJ
gave
saying
us
negative. Saying thank you so much for the support. Saying negative, secular jihadist is not Atheist Republic. Don't brush me off with a pacifier. Okay, so Susanna, you're hearing the demands of the people that we change the time of the show. Do you want to? We could address that maybe off air.
We actually have been thinking about moving it, but we'll have to do that. We'll have to have another discussion about that.
Yeah. So again, me and Susanna's times are also, our schedule is, it has to work with me and Susanna's schedule as well, because to see what works for us. But we're trying our best. We have heard your requests. Okay. Other people could also come and let us know what works best for them. But we are trying to do our best to make it work for more people. Okay. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. And we just got another super chat. It will show up very soon here. So thank you so much again, GJ, with the €6 super chat, saying the term Islamophobia renders human rights to a system of ideas called Islam and it's constantly used to shut down debate. Exactly.
Yep,
That's what I've
exactly.
heard.
You said it yourself.
Yeah.
And this comment by Asian American just really gets me. So Asian American is yelling at this Malaysian official, saying, "Stand up to the PRC, you spineless, cantankerous cowards." Basically saying, if you care so much about Islamophobia, why don't you go fight China over the fact that they have Muslims in concentration camps?
Well,
why don't you talk about that?
Right after they fight France, because fighting France over Muhammad cartoons takes priority. Fighting France
Step
over
aside,
Muhammad
bigger Muslims.
cartoons is more important than fighting China over putting 1 million Muslims and more in concentration camps.
What's their
This
thought
is your
process? They're like,
priority.
"Oh, don't worry, they'll understand." What?
Yes. You can now get the sexiest blasphemous art ever known to mankind for free. Too sexy to show most of it here on YouTube. We draw Muhammad, Hindu goddesses, sexy hijabi art, Jesus, Mother Mary, Japanese god, Greek gods, and much, much more. Click on the link below where it says get our free blasphemous art.